Good morning. Welcome to the Thursday edition of Breakfast Central. Thank you so much for joining us. Today, a number of our conversations will be looking at the big stories within and outside Nigeria. And speaking about outside Nigeria, we'll be bringing you updates on the protests happening in Kenya. I am Olive Emodi.
And I am Osaogi Ogbawan. Yes, welcome to Thursday morning's edition of Breakfast Central. Remember to be a part of the conversation via our social media platforms, simply at News Central TV. Or for those, of course, who are watching us online, you could always drop a comment in the chat box. Also, call the phone lines that are going to be on your screens by 8 a.m. this morning and share your thoughts with us on any of the conversations that we're having, including the newspaper review. We also have Mazino Appeal joining us. Good morning, Mazino.
Good morning, Olive. Good to have you guys here, or rather, good for you guys to have me. Whichever one. How's it going already for a Thursday?
Well, we're good. Well, maybe not as good as our siblings in Kenya who are fighting for their rights, fighting for a better life, and fighting against the finance bill. Not just against the finance bill, now against the government, because they are very disappointed in the government of President William Ruto. We've followed the protests. We've seen initially, the latest update would be that as at yesterday, President William Ruto has rejected the finance bill. He's not signing it. But they are asking that the president does step down. They'll be marching to State House today, according to the reports that we have. I'll be bringing updates on that. But Mazino, we'd like to get your thoughts on the protests so far, what their struggles are like. What do you make of this protest?
Well, there's so much I want to talk about this, but I was going to reserve it until after the news. But however, it's going to be about the parallels you can draw between Nigeria and Kenya when it comes to the population, the suffering, the strife that we're going through, and how similar these situations are, how they've handled it, what the outcome has been, and what it was in our case. But I'd rather reserve that until after the news, just so we have plenty of time so we can banter on that then.
Yeah. Personally, I think I mentioned it yesterday that I'm not surprised with the way things have turned, mostly because the demands have kind of now shifted beyond just a finance bill. It's now an outright protest against the William Ruto government. And there are certain reasons why that would happen, because I did say it yesterday that I do not think that the protest was simply just because of the finance bill. There's some pent-up anger, with the way the country has been run, I believe, in the last year or the last, couple of years since his election, or even prior to his election. So all that anger will be poured out when there is something that ignites it, and the finance bill turns out to be that reason. And another thing is, if you continue to demand excellence and demand accountability of government, the fact that persons lost their lives in the days during the protest, people were shot, maybe by security agencies or whoever, that is also, the responsibility of the government in Kenya. Of course, President William Ruto, who's the president, has to take responsibility for that. And I did see a few people mention that those lives have been lost are enough to ask for him to resign or to step down. That is the level of accountability that I expect, we would see in a sane society. But we'll see. The next couple of days will tell us, where this will lead and, how he would also handle the protests and the demands of, these, young Kenyans across the country. I'm sure that a lot across, the country, yes. I'm sure a lot of people beyond Kenya are watching this closely and seeing how these things turn out, especially here in Nigeria, that all it takes, when the level of frustration has gotten to its peak, all it takes is just one thing that triggers a whole wildfire.
You are correct. There are plenty of cautious tale that we could take from this one. You just mentioned something that's very scary, and that's the fact that this is not the first time that this is happening, and it only takes a spark for an entire fire to begin. We saw this with the Arab Spring, if anybody remembers. And
very true.
The unique thing about that one is it didn't just end in one country, it spread across several other countries. But how about I bring you the news, and then I can give you or tell you a few other details that I think could help the Nigerian situation when it comes to this.
You go ahead to bring us the news, but first let's bring the breakfast headlines.
This morning in Kaduna State, the former governor El-Rufai sues Kaduna Assembly over 432 billion naira inquiry report.
And Kenyan president withdraws finance bill after violent protests that have broken out in different parts of the country, leading to the loss of lives of young Kenyans.
The federal government holds its first meeting with ASUU, averts unions strike.
And reactions trail Abia government's restriction of tricycles is an update we'll be bringing on the show this morning.
So this morning, the newspaper front pages coming your way sometime around 8 a.m. Join us and have your thoughts on these major stories. But first, breakfast headlines.
Good morning once again. Now we begin breakfast headlines with news from Nigeria, where members of the National Transition Committee of the Nigeria Labour Congress on Tuesday stormed the Labour Party headquarters in Abuja, calling for the immediate resignation of National Chairman Julius Abure. Led by Acting Chairman Abdul Wahid Omar, the NLC members arrived at the Secretariat, chanting solidarity songs and demanding Abure step down, citing the expiration of his tenure. The protest marks a significant move by the labor union to influence the party's leadership. And barely 24 hours after the ousted council chairman defied police order in Rivers State, South Nigeria, to protest across the 23 local government areas due to the ongoing political crisis in the LGAs, top political leaders from the different wards of Obiokpo local government area of the state have held a solidarity march for the FCT Minister Nyesom Wike. That's talking about Rivers State. And the Comptroller General of Apapa Area Command of the Nigeria Customs Service, Babatunde Olumo, Tuesday joined the commander of NDLEA, Apapa Special Area Command, and other government agencies in the port in a walk to commemorate the 2024 International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Drug Trafficking. The customs boss noted that such collaboration between sister agencies of government is crucial for intelligence sharing and ensuring public safety. We're going to short break and bring you the rest of the news after. The rest of the news now, and let's let you know that earlier yesterday a fire engulfed parts of the Dangote Refinery in Lagos. Now, according to reports, the fire broke out in the early hours of Wednesday at the effluent treatment plant of the refinery. There's been no confirmation yet as to how the fire started, but videos showed smoke billowing out of the section of the refinery affected by the fire. The fire has since been put out, and a statement from the company's spokesperson, Anthony Chiejina, downplayed the severity of the fire incident. In a statement, Chiejina said there is no cause for alarm as the refinery is operating and there is no recorded injury or body harm to any staff on duty. Now, organized labor has expressed dissatisfaction with the Federal Executive Council's decision to step down the memorandum regarding the Tripartite Committee's report on the new national minimum wage. The Nigeria Labour Congress criticized the FEC's move, highlighting the potential for harmful speculation. Head of the Public Relations of the NLC, Benson Okpa, voiced concern over the FEC's failure to consider the memorandum during its meeting. He said delaying the Tripartite Committee's report leaves room for injurious speculations. Following the council meeting, Minister of Information Mohammed Idris said the FEC decided to step down the memorandum to allow for future consultations. Now, let's give you some update on the situation in Rivers State. Now, the Factional Youth Council of Nigeria, NYCN, has taken to the streets of Port Harcourt in a solidarity march, urging the police to maintain their presence at local government secretariats across Rivers State. Led by factional chairman Nwazabari Bani, the NYCN marched to the police command headquarters on Moscow Road. Bani addressed the crowd, stating that the police barricades at the secretariats have successfully prevented vandalism by hoodlums. He emphasized the need for the police to stay in place until the appeal court resolves the ongoing political issues in the state. Bani called on the Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, to provide the necessary supports to ensure peace and security at the council secretariats. And the former governor of Kaduna State, Nasir El-Rufai, has filed a defamation lawsuit against the Kaduna State Assembly on Wednesday at the Federal High Court in Kaduna. El-Rufai demanded a public apology from the lawmakers who published reports that claimed to defame him and his cabinet on the alleged misappropriation of over 423 billion naira during his 8 years administration. El-Rufai's legal team urged that the report is both false and malicious, designed to tarnish his reputation and discredit his administration's achievements, asserting that the allegations have caused significant harm to his personal and professional life. The former governor stated his developmental policies were efforts to improve infrastructure and education in Kaduna State. He maintains that the Assembly's allegations are politically motivated and lack any substantive evidence. And the Sokoto State House of Assembly has moved the Sokoto Emirate Council Amendment Bill through its first and second readings. If enacted, this bill will significantly reduce the powers of the Sultan of Sokoto, Sa'ad Abubakar III, including his authority to appoint kingmakers and district heads without government approval. This legislative action follows closely on the heels of concerns raised by the Muslim Rights Concern. On Monday, MURIC's executive director, Isiaka Akintola, issued a statement warning about an alleged plan by Sokoto State Governor Ahmed Aliyu to depose the Sultan. He emphasized that the Sultan's role is both traditional and religious, serving as the spiritual leader for all Nigerian Muslims, not just those in Sokoto State. And the news continues now in East Africa, where Kenyan President William Ruto has said that a bill containing contentious tax hikes would be withdrawn, dramatically reversing course after more than 20 people died and Parliament was ransacked by protesters opposed to the legislative action. But the president warned that the withdrawal of the finance bill would mean a significant shortfall in funding for development programs designed to help farmers and school teachers, amongst others. This comes as the East African nation struggles to lower its foreign debt burden. Ruto's administration has been taken by surprise by the intensity of opposition to its tax hike, with protests breaking out across the country last week. And that's all inside of the headlines this morning. Let's take it back to Osa and Olive.
Thank you very much, Mazino, for that update. Now, you wanted to give your feedback regarding the...
Yes, thank you very much. Now, let me get on my little pedestal here. Now, the thing is, with Nigeria and Kenya, the similarities abound. When you look at the especially population of youth in Kenya, it's quite similar to Nigeria, or relatively. We have more than 60% of Nigerian population as youth. So you can imagine what would happen if these people were to come together and say, hey, let's make action work. But we've seen that happen before. How did it go? Well, we all know the story of October 2020, if I'm not mistaken, and how that kind of like quelled everything. Well, not quell. It kind of like felt like we were just thrashed. Now, the situation is similar because first off, Ruto has given in. He said, okay, fine, we'll take back these hikes, no more. But in the Nigerian situation, we continued, or the policies never changed. It was still the same thing. However, if these policies were made in such a way that they could actually help the youth, put them to work, give them things to do, what is our biggest asset? It used to be oil. What is it right now? It's population. How can you use that to your advantage as a country that does not export anything but oil, which we're having a shortfall of right now?
Right.
If you make it possible, these policies where we can actually use our population as a service to other countries. Look at India, look at Singapore. They use their population. If you had a tech company, for instance, you would outsource your customer care to India. This is how they export their population. And we can do the same. Put the youth to work. Give them policies that will help them export their abilities, export their craft.
It's quite a disappointment, Mazino, because the Kenyan people had a lot of hope. There was a lot of excitement. I remember the August 9th elections when William Ruto was announced as the president. There was so much hope, excitement, anticipation that he would turn around the economy, especially because he had come from a background of poverty himself. Mm-hmm. But this is not what they have bargained for. Much later on the show, I'll be taking what Nigerians are saying as we'll go to X, because Nigerians are certainly reacting to the story in Kenya. And then we'll bring more updates on the story. But for now, thank you so much, Mazino. See you at 9 a.m.
Thank you very much, Olive. Thank you very much, Osa.
All right. So we have more stories to look at this morning, but we'll go on a quick break. And when we come back, we'll be starting off with our conversations. Stay with us. Abia State government says it has reduced the operational time of tricycle operators in Abia State between 6 a.m. and 7 p.m. This move, according to the Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs and the Chairman, Harmonized Task Force for Revenue Collection, Uzo Nwachukwu, is to check the rate of crimes perpetrated in the state using tricycles. This order will come into effect on the 1st of July 2024 in Umuahia and Aba. Our correspondent, News Central's correspondent Chinwe Ugele, reports that the new policy has also elicited reactions from the transporters and passengers alike. Let's take a look.
For everyone in Omaha or Aba who doesn't own a car, the tricycle, popularly known as keke, has been one effective transportation system that not only conveys people within the city, but also to neighboring communities. The time restrictions stipulated by the government, effective by July, will certainly affect commercial activities, the economic status, social and official programs of the people, and even the state.
There's a levy we normally pay daily. So, and some of them are riding under high purchase.
Some people, like me now, I'm a banker, sometimes we close around 8, sometimes around 9. So I don't expect that when I finish closing around that type of time, I start trekking or I should sleep in the office. I don't know what to do now.
The Commissioner for Local Government and Chieftaincy Affairs in the state, Uzonwachukwu, says the decision was reached with the support of the Keke union leaders to reduce the crime rate in the state.
People who have the means to be able to invest in commercial buses, big buses and all that, we're encouraged. But we will also not allow anybody to use this time to conduct his own criminal activities because you have buses or do kapu and you also willing to contribute to the criminality in the state.
If the assertion of the commissioner is anything to go by, why are vehicles still allowed on the roads by daytime and at night, even though they are also used to kidnap, rob and commit other crimes?
And this law now government made is not going to favor us because some people travel far away and come back by that time. How can they not go to their house by 7 o'clock? You say people should stop. Now somebody that has some money that for transport, he will not double it because if Keke does not operate by that time, they will double the fare, and it's not good. Everybody is complaining. The society is bad. The economy is bad.
The bad ones are very few. The number of the good people outnumber the bad ones. So they shouldn't, because of the bad ones, say they want to restrict movement at that early hours of the day. Because when we talk of 6 p.m., 7 p.m. is still very early. People are still busy. Even some government workers are still there.
What becomes the fate of the people who close work late in the evening? What becomes the fate of the traders who also close from their shops and market late evening? The Keke operators themselves are asking the government to also rescind its decision and take the time forward to a time where they will be able to meet up their daily obligations. In Omaha for News Central, Chinwe Ugeli.
Interesting developments there in Abia State. But of course, to quickly mention, in Enugu State, I think there was also something similar that was done with the same reasons to fight crime. In 2017 or between 2015 and 2017, it was the same reason, of course, to reduce the usage of these keke riders to commit petty crimes in different parts of Enugu State. So it's not new, but I think a lot of people would also argue that it is a failure of state police, it's a failure of the policing system, security services across the state that makes you then frustrate these. I mean, there's a lot of people who ride tricycles in an honest way, and of course it assists with transportation across the state. So if you then stop it from running in the evening, you're going to be frustrating a lot of people who are trying to make it back home from work, simply because the policing in the state is struggling. But we'll probably get into that later. The Lagos State Fire and Rescue Services has announced plans to install a centralized generator in the Lagos Island market to curb frequent market fires. Director of the LSFRS, Margaret Adesheye, attributed fire incidents to negligence and stressed the need for stakeholder collaboration to find lasting solutions. She revealed that the government plans to introduce a centralized generator to eliminate the need for individual generators in the Lagos Island market.
Now, this was disclosed at the Lagos International Fire Safety Conference on Tuesday. And the update regarding that is that Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu also emphasized the importance of collective responsibility in preventing fire disasters. He noted that many fire incidents are caused by careless behavior and urged market traders to take responsibility. Sanwo-Olu highlighted the government's efforts, including building fire stations and increasing fire service capacity, but stressed that everyone has a role to play in fire prevention. And yes, I agree that everyone has a role to play in fire prevention, and this looks like a great plan. But once again, this highlights the challenge that we have with power generation. If we had constant power supply, these marketers will not need to generate their own power. So there's only so much that we can do to blame them. But yes, until we sort that out, I think this looks like a viable plan. Everybody ban the use of individual generators and make sure it's one thing to say you're providing central generators, it's another thing to actually be to ensure that it's constantly working and they're not hearing stories, because a number of them will have businesses that are largely dependent on power.
Very true. You know, and I think, you know, you've basically just said everything with the failure of government to provide steady electricity. If that was there, then nobody would need a generator in the first place.
Yes.
And so if you're going to be taking over the responsibility to provide electricity across the whole market, I hope that they can do it across the major markets, you know, in the whole of Lagos State, but ensure that it's adequate power supply, that nobody then has their business suffering because government is not providing, you know, according to its promise, 24 hours power supply across the market. So, you know, so these are important aspects, you know, that I think, and it's not just that. I just feel like there's different levels of infrastructure that these markets lack, that the government should have been able to provide. You know, when there's a market fire also, you know, the reason that the market fires get so disastrous is also a failure of bits and pieces of infrastructure that should be available to get, you know, fire trucks into the market and the likes.
Which is what they say that they're working on, that they're having central fire stations, so that's great. And then also in fact, seeing how choked the market is further exacerbates the fire. There's so many.
But I'm happy at least the government is thinking in this direction. I just hope that they can do it to, you know, a favorable level. But let's move away from Lagos and from Nigeria and go to the eastern part of the continent. Now, following the anti-tax protest that resulted in several deaths, Kenyan President William Ruto has withdrawn the finance bill that sparked the deadly demonstrations on Tuesday. This event has been described as the most significant challenge to Kenya's government in decades.
The chaos on Tuesday led the government to deploy the military, and President Ruto called protesters actions treasonous. However, the president now says the bill caused widespread dissatisfaction and he has listened and conceded. Joining us to discuss this is Vice President, International Police Association and security analyst Enoch Alumasi Makanga. Good morning. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good morning, good morning, good morning.
All right. Kenyans don't seem to be very pleased, even though the initial protest or agitation was against the finance bill. Now they're asking President William Ruto to step down because, as we've seen, there have been reports of loss of lives in the protest. How differently could this have been handled to prevent us from getting to this point where they're now agitated and saying, you know, not signing the finance bill is not good enough, that the president has to go? How differently could this have been handled?
Okay, thank you for having me. Things are cooking up and they seem to be a problem, I think, on the side of the presidential advisors. I think the people who advise the president on security issues, I think, made serious blunders. First of all, they underrated the youth. When the youth came up and they said, no, we have problems and problems are not being sorted out, I think the government completely underestimated this youth. Now, why did they underestimate them? These guys are very good in digital mobilization. They formed up a very serious mobilization strategy. And when they said we are coming on streets, first of all, these guys did not even think about, they didn't think about these people actualizing their protests. To the surprise of the government, these guys gave a notice that last Tuesday they are getting into the streets and they are going to parliament. Now, the mistake that the government did was that, number one, they did not put in place a serious security mechanism to protect the parliament. So they thought, these are small kids, there's nothing they can do. And then number two, they did not put in place a good mechanism to deal with riots. You know, riots have got a way that they are dealt with. First of all, with the first layer that deals with talking to the protesters, making sure that you use the diplomacy to bring them down. The second layer brings in the guys who are having the tear gas, be able to disperse them. And the third layer, the one that is having rubber bullets, to be able to shoot if the rioters. So these guys did not put in place such a system. And then number two, as I said, they really underestimated them. And these guys were very many. There were more than 10,000 in the streets. And the number was just huge that these guys, the police could not be able to handle. So the whole day was messy. A lot of property was destroyed properly. In fact, this is the worst demonstration from independence that we've ever had.
I'm glad that you've brought in the police, and thank you very much for mentioning some of the mistakes and the ways in which you think President Ruto should have handled this differently, not underestimating the young people, being able to have conversation with them, maybe to reason with them, not having enough security to protect the parliament. But the police and the security officers have come under fire. There have been allegations of them having directly shot at protesters, leading to the death of some of the young protesters. How do you react to this?
Yes, I was on Citizens TV yesterday in the morning, and I addressed the president straight away. I told the president that he has not organized his security teams. His security advisors have given him wrong information. And one of the problems that we had is that the police shot very many people. We've been told there are around 10 people who died. But from the information we've received yesterday in the evening, I think they are trying to hide information. A lot of people died the day of the protests. And then with the issue of what President Ruto promised. President Ruto's campaign was he wants to economically empower the low-income guys, these guys who are selling things in the market, these guys who are doing these low-income jobs. So when he was walking around campaigning, he was telling them, I'll change your lives, I'll change your lives, I'll give you jobs. You know, he really put hope. He really put a serious hope on Kenyans. And that's why guys actually voted him overwhelmingly. Unfortunately, I think what has happened is that things have turned upside down. Number one, a lot of thefts are going on. You can see government officials giving a lot of money, $3 million, around $30,000 in church fundraising. And these guys are talking badly. They are saying, you know, there's nothing you can do. We are in the government. There's nothing you can do. And now, these are the things that agitated the youths. You know, we are talking about, you are saying you found no money in the government coffer. And then, on the other hand, you are making international trips. This guy has made more than 68 international trips. And you know, when the president goes outside the country, he goes with almost like 200 people. It's the advance party that goes where the president is going, and then there's actually a team that flew him with a plane. And then the worst one was when he actually hired a special jet from Dubai to go to US. So these are some of the blunders that the Ruto has done, and it has costed him very, 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 very heavily.
Yeah, let me just also ask. I mean, I'm not sure if the protest, will continue even after the finance bill has been withdrawn. But the next couple of days, of course, will tell us more. But as it stands,
today things are hot. As we are talking today, things are hot. Today things are hot.
All right. So as it stands, would you also support those who say William Ruto should step down beyond the finance bill? Taking a look at how he has also handled Kenya and looking at some of the things that you've mentioned, would you also join the call or those who say William Ruto should step down?
The first blunder he made the day before yesterday, the evening of the protest, he came on TV and he gave a very bad statement. First of all, as a president, you don't just come and start saying, these youth are criminals and I'll deal with you accordingly. I've instructed police to make sure they shoot you to kill. He talked very badly. That is now what was in the situation. He talked very, very badly, not giving any confidence to the families that have lost their kids, not talking about the finance bill. He talked very badly. I think it is after this that I think his advisors talked to him yesterday and told him, man, you've made a very serious blunder. Can you go back to Kenya? So yesterday is when now he came back and he was now more polished. He was having the MPs. He's saying, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm pulling down the bill. The deputy president came out again after the speech. They just followed each other like 1 hour, and they said, Kenyans, we are very sorry. We apologize for what we have done, and we are asking you guys not to go in streets. Unfortunately, these guys have not made a decision. They are very good, serious digital mobilization. They had sent out very many calls saying, guys, we should not, let's go to State House. Because we have no leader, so he cannot talk to us. We don't have leaders, so let's go So today's aim is they want to go to State House because Ruto has said he wants to talk to them. And they are saying, we have no leaders, so we come into State House to come and meet you. So I think that's now where the problem will come in. Because
yeah,
now,
I mean, but what I'm
says,
asking is, you know, if the conversation moves into a William Ruto should go, you know, would you support that? And do you have, I mean, would you understand where that is coming from? Do you think that William Ruto should also step down from your perspective?
According to the Kenya Constitution, that cannot happen. You know, that's not possible. Ruto stepping down, that's not possible. It will not happen. What I know in Kenya, it can't happen. That's what people are saying. But Ruto stepping down, no, Ruto is not that type of person you can tell him to step down. Number two, you know, these youth they are really burned out. You know, somebody goes to university, gets a degree, 5 years, he has no jobs, 6 years, he has no jobs. So, and then we have so many of them graduating every year, like around 10,000, 15,000 graduating every year. So this was the good time, a very good opportunity for them. When they just got a small opportunity, they said, wait a minute, now, this is the time now to fix the government. So now the issue is, I don't support the issue of them doing. The only problem is now, I'm just wondering how the president will handle the issue, because he needs to now calm down. He needs to really just find a way of how we deal with this youth. He needs to appoint a team to be able to assist him in terms of how do. But if he applies the ruthless hand telling the police to shoot and kill, now that will complicate issues. In fact, today, if any of them are killed, now that will complicate issues. So what now matters is now the Solomonic wisdom, how this president will be able to actually handle this issue and deal with these guys as far as this matter is concerned. It's a very complicated issue, balancing between the rest of the government, the rest of the Kenyans, and then dealing with this youth. It requires a serious brainstorming and coming up with an issue on how the president will deal with this youth. Otherwise, as we stand right now, they've said it's nonsense. They can't listen to him.
Okay, now you're saying that President William Ruto cannot be asked to step down based on the constitutional provision of Kenya. But let's talk about the MPs. We saw the votes for and against the bill. 196 votes for, 105 against, and 3 votes were cancelled. And these MPs have been largely criticized. The same MPs who supported the bill were the ones who, applauded when the president said he was no longer assenting to the bill and they were getting rid of it. What do you think will become of these MPs? Is there a possibility that these young protesters might start to recall the MPs? What is the possibility of what might be done to them or what might be asked of them?
The MPs are greedy. They are very greedy. They, like now the bill, they were given each one $2 million, around $20,000, for them to vote yes. And that is the main problem, because you can see all of them have been attacked. Their homes have been burned in their villages where they come from. Kenyans are saying they will not vote them in 2027. Some of them are already preparing, recalling them from the MPs possible. You simply require you put in place signatures that are around a third of the total voters vote. For example, if we have got 60,000 voters, if you're able to get 20,000, then the IEBC, the Electoral Commission will just confirm the signatures and these guys are recalled back. So most of them are facing a problem where they were elected. And the other problem is if they meet the youth, by bad luck they meet the youth, I think they won't survive. They won't survive. Some of them may be killed. Some of them will be injured. That's the problem that these MPs are having. And then the government, the parliament, I think, is in recess. Why they are going in recess is just to avoid them getting confrontation with the voters, and the voters now waiting for them in the upcountry where they were voted to come in as MPs.
I want to talk about the police as well. Are we expecting that there will be a thorough investigation? There were allegations of police shooting live at protesters. I know we've talked about this earlier, but do we expect to see a thorough investigation being done? Do we expect that they will be made to answer for their crimes against against the humans of Kenya?
It's not possible. In Kenya, we normally say that we shall have investigations being done, but at the end of the day, no investigations are done. It will be announced publicly that investigations will be done, but the way we work in Kenya is that police cannot investigate themselves. Whenever we have a shooting, we have an internal affairs police unit that investigates police. But at the end of the day, we rarely get results of what they've investigated. I know the government will say police will be investigated, but ideally, I don't think that will be done because they also fear the issue of ICC coming on board and saying, now, can we have the president again going back to ICC to answer judges of murder? That's what they are trying to avoid.
All right. I also want you to speak about what happens next. Where do you see the rest of the week or the next couple of days? How do you see things turning out? And also former President Uhuru Kenyatta, has he had further conversations concerning this? Is his name also coming up in any of the conversations generally?
President Ruto, Uhuru, nothing has come out. We only saw his appeal to Kenyans to stop chaos because he said if this happens, I think it's going to break in Kenya. And you're saying the President Ruto should calm down and stop just stamping. I think that one came out very clear. That was good in terms of the former president telling the president that please listen to Kenyans, That worked out very well. Now, as the way the week will look out, I'm looking at what comes out today. If at all the youth will come out in large numbers like what happened on Tuesday, then that means this thing has moved to another level. I anticipate two things. One, there are those who might say, wait a minute, the president has withdrawn his heart stand. Why can't we just sit at home? So if the numbers are not big, let's say the half of what happened on Tuesday, then that means some of the youth will see there's no need of going to the streets. So the few ones who will get the streets can be managed by police. But now the problem is if these guys come out the way they are saying that today they want 1 million people on the street, then that will become complicated. And that's why I was saying that it requires Solomonic wisdom for this police to be able to know how to deal with these guys in order to avoid just complicating issues and making it very more difficult, like what happened and killing them. That will actually bring issues.
I think my final question would be, what's the hope for Kenya to generate revenue? We know that part of the reasons why this finance bill became a conversation in the first place because they are owing a lot of money. And rather than cut on their own cost of governance, we're seeing that they're trying to tax the people more. So if the finance bill is out of the way, what are the options for Kenya to generate revenue? Are these conversations even brought forward in the first place?
Yes, he informed people yesterday on TV that they will try to use what is available. And he says they will stop the project that were there, that were initiated, that was supposed to be initiated by that bill, once they get the money from that. The problem is Kenyans are being taxed so high. I mean, the people are really suffering. Companies have closed. Kenya Revenue Authority have closed so many companies because people cannot afford to pay. This came as a result of the COVID, which I think even you guys, you had a problem on it. So the problem we've had here is that the people are really suffering. There are a lot of people are suffering. There's a lot of unemployment issues. People are not investing in Kenya, they're investing in Tanzania and Uganda. And that brings a problem because, if an investor is not coming in Kenya to create job opportunities, now that tells you very clearly that there's a problem. Because the number of youth that are coming from universities are very many, and yet jobs are not coming by. Now, the investors are not coming by. So these are the issues that you see the frustrating Kenyans. Now, when the president came on board, he was really very optimistic. He told Kenyans, guys, I'm coming on board. I'm telling you, the mamas who sell in the market, who sell eggs, who sell fish, I'm telling you, I'm going to change your life. People really thought, hallelujah, this one now, we've been saved. This guy is a savior. All of a sudden, now, these guys are taxing bread. These guys are taxing salt. These guys they are just now pressing that small man who is on the ground. That's now where the problem has come in. Guys have realized, kumbe these things didn't work out. This guy was cheating us. And now the one thing that the president has, he has a very good, he is charismatic. You heard like when Obama is speaking, Obama is very charismatic. When he holds a mic, he drives the agenda in a very fast way. Just the way Obama does. Yeah, the same thing is that's how Ruto does. That's when Ruto holds a mic, my friend. The guy is very sweet. He is very sweet. He is just
many people disagreed with his last speech. It didn't seem very sweet. The one before, him having kicked out the bill. But we'd love to have you again We know that they are overtaking, or they're going marching to State House today, and we hope that we can get some positive feedback, and then we'd love to have you join us to have a conversation again. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. I'll be available to be able to give you what's happening. Thank you so much and welcome again.
All right. All right, now let's bring the conversation back here to Nigeria and head to Kaduna State, where the former governor of Kaduna State, El-Rufai, has filed a fundamental rights suit at the Federal High Court in Kaduna against the State House of Assembly on Wednesday. Now, this comes after Kaduna State House of Assembly claimed in a probe report that El-Rufai's 8-year administration allegedly siphoned 423 billion naira, leaving the state with huge debt liabilities.
The former governor asked the court to declare the report of the Assembly's probe null and void, as it was not given the opportunity of a fair hearing over the allegations leveled against him and his administration by the Assembly's ad hoc committee. Now, joining us is legal practitioner, managing partner at Crescent Cradle Attorneys, Samson Onuche. Good morning, and thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me on the program this morning.
All right. Interesting turn of events there in Kaduna State. Let's get your reactions first of all. From the from what of course is in the news so far. The governor challenging the House of Assembly and of course saying that he wasn't given a fair hearing. Did you expect that this would happen, and does he have a point?
Now, ordinarily, you would expect that a situation like this will occur because of what has transpired in the State House of Assembly when it comes to the probe of the former governor. Now, the root of the issue came out of the frustration that the state government was saying concerning the lack of money or the lack of finance to go into capital projects in Kaduna State. Now, when this investigation was actually about to start, the House of Assembly was of the opinion that about $587 million and also 85 billion and also a liability of 111 contractual liabilities are some of the liabilities that is hanging on the state. And investigation was set in and by the State House of Assembly, and it actually reviewed that a particular sum was credited to being taken by the former governor. Now, when you set up, the House of Assembly has the power to set up such committee under Section 128 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The House of Assembly has that power to set up an investigative panel to bring out a findings. But when such investigative panel is set up, based on the rules of fair hearing, according to Section 36 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, when a party is involved in such issues and the findings of such panel will affect such party, it is only wise that you will give that party fair hearing by inviting that party to come and defend himself. I wouldn't know if El-Rufai had been invited and he refused to attend to the invite, because you cannot force a man to defend himself. And if he has been invited and he neglect or refuse to heed to the invite, then there will be no complaint of fair hearing. But if he has not been invited, just as the State House of Assembly has the power to go into such investigation, as an individual that such criminal investigation will affect, he also has the right to go to court to complain that there was no right for fair hearing according to Section 36 of the Constitution. So it is expected, if he has not been given such invitation, it is expected that he can approach the court for remedy.
But, this is, where, I feel like a lot of people also need some clarity. When you say that, or when he goes to the court to say he was given fair hearing, does this stop the committee from continuing with its investigation and putting forward its findings?
Now, it doesn't stop the committee from going forward to give the investigation and also bringing out the findings. Because when you look at the findings of the committee, evidence were being taken, both documentary evidence, oral evidence, and also circumstantial evidence as the Constitution has mandated. Some members of that served in the government of El-Rufai from 2015 down to 2023 was also part of the investigation, and they submitted themselves and also submitted some documents. So findings can be made because witnesses appeared and document has been brought before, evidence has been brought before that panel. But if, however, that evidence will affect a particular person, that person needs to be invited personally to come and defend himself. It doesn't stop the committee bringing out their findings because other persons appeared and the findings can actually relate to other persons that have appeared. But it is only the law that if that particular findings affects a particular person, which it has affected El-Rufai in this instance, he ought to be invited for fair hearing, for the purpose of fair hearing.
I mean, so yes, like you've stated, he ought to be invited, but do you also see this as his way of stopping the committee from going on with its, responsibility of investigating the expenses of the previous administration? Because if he's simply saying, well, you didn't invite me for a fair hearing, would you expect that the committee, or if the court gives a ruling in his favor, that the committee would then drop it or stop its probe?
I wouldn't expect that because the government is a continuous process. And even if the particular committee that is set up doesn't actually investigate this, a subsequent government can actually investigate. And if the court finds out that the allegation against the former governor is there, but he was not given fair hearing, and the court actually quashed that particular findings of the committee, it doesn't preclude the committee from going back to do that particular investigation back and setting up that panel and also investigating him to come and give his own side of the story. It doesn't preclude the right of that committee because it's a constitutional right that is guaranteed, and then the court cannot take it away.
All right. So now that he's asked for the enforcement of his fundamental human rights, what would that look like?
Now, in this instance, that there is a criminal probe is actually a serious issue because when the criminal matter is being investigated, that issue of fair hearing is not something that should be swept under the carpet. So now that he has approached the Federal High Court for the issues of fundamental right against his probe, the court has the power to quash every probe that has been as a nullity that affects the former governor El-Rufai. The court has that power. But the State House of Assembly also have the power to also initiate the same proceedings and going through the right steps.
Yeah, I mean, the concern, that a lot of people have, and I also want to know, like you've mentioned, he would challenge, whether, he was given a fair hearing or not. For me, what I'm particular about, which I've already asked is, does that stop them from continuing with their probe? And if they're, a sincere new government in Kaduna State, then they maybe should, of course, start the process again and invite him for a fair hearing. Of course, give him his right of fair hearing. Let him also, share his thoughts. We've seen these things happen over and over and over again. It happened in Kaduna State with, in Kano State, I beg your pardon, when Abdullahi Ganduje was accused of stuffing dollars in his babariga. Somehow, some way, the State House of Assembly, he went to court, and that case just never saw the light of day. Is it your expectation that that's exactly what might play out here? Because if a state government and its committee is bold enough to accuse the former government of mismanaging more than 400 billion naira, they should have some proof and be willing to prosecute to get those monies back for the state, I believe. So do you see that it's going to be the same trajectory of, just, putting clogs in the wheel and eventually the case goes nowhere?
I wouldn't want to preempt the ruling that the court will give because everything is based on the circumstances of the case. So I wouldn't want to preempt with the ruling that the court may give, but it's a known fact that issues like this, politics come to play. And when you look at it, the government has a right to investigate, but we have seen a lot of situations whereby we see a lot of politics come into play in this kind of issues, and we see a lot of them that has been swept over the carpet for some time now. So, but I wouldn't want to preempt the court, and I wouldn't want to say this is what will be the outcome of this particular matter, or if the decision of the House of Assembly will be swept under the carpet and it will be of no effect. I wouldn't want to preempt, but I want to also add that the politics, there is influence of politics inside, and we shouldn't forget that campaign actually starts from the first day you enter the office, and people have a lot of interest. So I wouldn't want to preempt what the court will say.
Okay, just to double check with you, you're very well aware of the process of the investigation by the ad hoc committee established by the Kaduna State House of Assembly. Are you certain that witnesses were called? Was evidence taken? What is the typical process for investigating? Because according to him, he was not called, he wasn't given a chance to be heard. So can you maybe run us through the typical process of investigating this, if you're aware?
Now, if the government have actually seen a particular situation and you look at like, for instance, you look at the project that was allocated and you look at that project has not been implemented, and there is substantial evidence to see that something has not been done from what has been approved. The State House of Assembly, under Section 128, has the power to set up an investigating panel to look into such activity. But when such investigative panel is set up, the state government will have to serve a notice in the official gazette of the state notifying the public that this particular proceedings is about to take place, and this is the reason for the investigation that is about to go on. Now, when this thing has been served and the committee has been set up, a day will also be set up for witnesses to be called to address issues that borders on what the committee is investigating. I am aware that some members of some persons that serve in El-Rufai government were invited, and I'm also aware that the evidence were taken and documents were also brought before the committee, because this committee has the power to investigate because they approve the budget. And since they have the power to approve the budget, they also have the power to inquire how was this budget implemented, how was the money spent. So they have the power, and they have exercised that power by calling some persons in the government that was part of the implementation of this project, or that were privy to what was going on, or have some document to tender. So I'm aware that this procedure has been taken, and all these procedures were taken before the committee arrived at its conclusion and its findings.
All right.
But the only challenge that was there is that we cannot ascertain, or I cannot ascertain now, if this investigation or the invitation was extended to the former governor.
So quickly,
the committee also has the power to also summon a witness and also issue out a warrant to compel a witness to attend to its proceedings if such witness refuse to obey the summons.
Great. Ms. Onachek, so quickly, what I want to know next is, if they carry out their investigation, right, the committee carries out investigation, finds reasonable proof that Malam El-Rufai is guilty, what happens next? Whose responsibility will it be to prosecute the former governor? I mean, the State House of Assembly may not have prosecutorial powers, I beg your pardon. So whose responsibility should it be next if they go ahead with the investigation and they find reasonable evidence that, you know, he did commit these crimes?
Now, the power to investigate them is an oversight function of the legislative arm of the government that the State House of Assembly has exercised. Now, if the committee has its findings, the committee does not have the power to prosecute. Rather, they will refer it to the appropriate authority that has the power to prosecute. And we have the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission when it has to do with issues that has to do with economic and financial crimes. We also have the police doing prosecution, and we also have other regulatory agencies that are charged with prosecution. Now, the findings of the committee too can also be implemented by the state government, because when a committee makes the findings, they will definitely make findings on several aspects that they have investigated. So they will send that findings to the state government to actually implement the finding. And where there are criminal allegations, they will send it to the appropriate authority, just as I've earlier mentioned, for prosecution of those cases.
All right. Whilst we await the ruling of the court regarding his fundamental human right, I know you did mention something about politics at play. What are the chances that there is politics truly at play, especially seeing as the current current governor and the former governor are both from the same political party.
Is that the challenge we are having is that each time an investigation comes up like this, to a lot of people, it looks like there is a political undertone that is there. But it is actually the right thing to do, to investigate when we look at it like a wrong has actually been done. But this power to investigate has been abused over the years by a lot of authority and government in Nigeria. And we know that once you have an interest, although even if the governor has served 8 years tenure and he will not come back as a governor, he has an interest in the position because he's a stakeholder of the state. And he may have an interest in the next election. The next election, as a politician, you plan ahead and is not far away. So there are a lot of interests that will be there. So, but I wouldn't say that this is actually politically motivated, but we have seen situations whereby some allegations were politically motivated.
Yeah, all right. We'll definitely be speaking with you again, you know, of course, as we wait for the court's ruling and further developments in Kaduna State. Thank you very much for joining us, Samson Onuche, and have a brilliant day ahead.
Thank you very much for having me on the show.
All right. Of course, you've had a very interesting hour, moving from Nigeria, of course, to Kenya, and then back to Nigeria. Let's share with you a quick recap of some of the things we've spoken about, and also what comes next in the second half of Breakfast Central. Coming up next, the federal government holds its first meeting with ASUU as it averts a union strike. And also the newspaper front pages, what are the major stories making headlines across Nigeria this morning? And also, what Nigerians are saying.
Welcome back to Breakfast Central. We're looking at the big stories making the headlines today, and we're joined by the publisher of CKN News, Chris Kende Nwandu, as we analyze the stories. Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, let's get into the paper this morning and look at our first paper. On the front page of our first paper this morning, the big story on the Daily Independent is Tinubu vows to sustain war against drugs and illicit substances. Drug test kits must for homes, schools, offices, according to Marwa. AMCON's conflicting profit report cause for worry. Dangote says fire at refinery won't affect operations. And anyway, $1 trillion economy. NGX unveils e-offering platform in readiness for banks recapitalization. El-Rufai sues Kaduna Assembly over 432 billion naira probe report. Now, the figure is quite confusing. We've been seeing mixed reports. Some say 432, some say 423. The Speaker of the Kaduna State House of Assembly said 423. So it's a number of mixed figures we're seeing there. Army deploys 177 personnel to Guinea-Bissau for peacekeeping. Only government policies can enhance access to quality medicines. This is by Obi. Explosion at hotel ploy to foist state of emergency, says Fubara. This is a follow-up to the Rivers crisis. Pro-Wike ex-local government chairman may freeze council's actions, according to reps. Tinubu not working against the interest of North, according to Shetima. And final story, Lagos proactive steps averted catastrophic outcome in cholera battle, according to Sanwo-Olu. Let's move over to the next paper.
All right. The Punch news comes up next. Dangote Refinery crude supply crisis threatens oil investments. Operators warn federal government. Federal government urged to deepen investors' confidence. Dangote allays fear over refinery fire. Also, well, like you said, different figures. 423 billion naira theft. El-Rufai sues Kaduna Assembly, challenges probe. We can also find the government and ASUU meet to avert strike in varsities. Federal government and banks begin talks on nationwide broadband rollout. Tinubu backs NDLEA to end drug abuse and trafficking. National Assembly resumes 2023 budget implementation extension. PDP candidate receives APC defectors, vows to unseat Ayedatiwa. That's also on the Punch newspapers this morning. That's all we have. Next newspaper before we bring in our guests this morning. Let's go to the Nigerian Tribune.
On the front page of the Nigerian Tribune, FEC steps down memo on new minimum wage. Tinubu to consult governor's private sector. Information minister says wage award will continue for now. Interesting. We expect new wage implementation by July ending, says Labour. Ways and Means securitization responsible for 24 trillion naira debt rise, according to DMO. Cardozo expresses optimism about taming inflation. Explosion rocks Port Harcourt, kills dynamite-bearing protester. Anti-Fubara forces enjoying federal might, Clark tells Tinubu. No plan to dethrone Sultan, says Sokoto government. Students' loan, federal government postpones application process for state institutions. Customs Deputy Comptroller General slumps, dies at Reps investigative hearing. That was quite traumatic to watch. Cholera, FEC approves Interministerial Committee on Emergency Operations. That's all that we can take this morning. And remember that you can be a part of the conversation. The numbers to call are on your TV screens. Please do well to call and be a part of the conversation. But now let's bring in Chris Kende Nwandu to react to some of the stories. And I'd like us to, begin with the Punch newspaper, which was the first one that we took. No, it wasn't the Punch newspaper. The Daily Independent newspaper was the first one that we took. There's so many stories there. Maybe we can start with the Kaduna situation. El-Rufai suing Kaduna Assembly, which was what we talked about before we went on break, saying that they denied him his fundamental right of fair hearing whilst conducting their investigation, and now he sued them for his fundamental rights to be enforced.
Yeah, he's within his right as enshrined in the Constitution. I think it's Schedule 4 of the 1990 amended as a right to sue if he feels that his personality or his person is being impugned in whatever way by the report of the State House of Assembly on the alleged loans taken by his administration. But the State House of Assembly have come to say that they were investigating the administration, not El-Rufai as a person, and that they've called the necessary people that they felt need to be called and to answer questions on some of the issues being raised, mostly the commissioners and some tax, what do we call it now, tax experts or consultants, as it were. But you cannot shave the head of a man in his absence. So you are talking about an administration which somebody administered for 8 years. So the onus is on you to also invite the person. You cannot probe my administration. You cannot be probing my. You can't say you are probing my family. You call my son. You call my daughter. You
don't call me.
And me and myself, the man of the house. You didn't invite me. So it is within his right. But I don't think the Kaduna State government have taken any action on that report yet, because the House of Assembly doesn't have a right of prosecution. They don't have. What they do is they do their basic investigation as they and move it. But the fundamental part is that if there's going to be prosecution, anybody can call for prosecution. It doesn't have to wait for the government. You as an individual, especially somebody somebody from Kaduna State, because I from Imo cannot go and start suing it, because the court will ask, what is your interest? I don't have locus, I don't have any interest in affairs in Kaduna. But even NGOs, civil society organizations and directors who feel that this has to do with the lives of people can also go to court. But I don't know why the Kaduna State government is dilly-dallying, because they're supposed to issue a white paper. His team,
El-Rufai's team, the response to this is that there is some political undertone happening there. And do you see that as a possibility? And it's a bit confusing, because both of them are from the same political party. If it was like rival political parties, would have said, oh, that's the usual excuse. But if they're giving the excuse of some political undertone happening here,
the man that is there today was practically picked by Nasir El-Rufai, the Senator Sani, as the candidate of the APC, and he supported them all through. This is not the first time we are seeing this. It has happened in several states. What is happening in River State is the same thing. The godfather and the godson, they're falling out. You've seen it happen in several Kanu, Abia, Enugu.
Even though Rivers has not yet investigated.
So those are no, but that was he said that he was going to investigate.
Yes, he said, but he hasn't really investigated.
I'm saying that no, what they are talking about, the falling out of godfathers and godsons, is nothing new.
Well, true that.
Yes, but whatever we do, whatever they do should be in the interest of the people of Kaduna State. 432 billion, 423 billion, whichever way is that, which means whichever one. The fact remains that the money of Kaduna people seems to have, quote unquote, taken a flight, and they have a right to be able to investigate. Now, if on the basis of going to court, as I repeat, the former governor has a right to be able to go to court and going to seek redress in terms of, because it is perception and image. And he feels that his fundamental human rights are being breached. But that is what all of them always say.
Yeah.
That's what all of them always say. Oh, you're infringing on
Yeah, but
the fact is that if you have the fact, there are certain issues that even you are not invited, if there are certain facts that you have at your disposal, and you say that, then it's for you to bring out the facts and say, you understand what I mean? You have a right. You can even take a full page in the newspaper and say, the so-called money you say that as well, this is what was used, this is what you remember what happened in Abia State when the governor of Abia State accused the former governor of embezzling the money meant for the airport in Abia State. That's Okeke-Igbokwe. Okeke-Igbokwe came to say, okay, no, we decided to stop that airport project because we believe it wasn't viable. It's now started writing that project. Yes, yeah. You know, start writing. We use it on this social project. We use it on this one. That is how it goes.
But I mean, for me, and I think it was one of the things I was trying to point out with the previous guest that we had is a lot of times these things just end up nowhere.
Yeah.
When you hear about a new government probing the activities of the previous administration. Nigerians have this expectation, that if you don't go to the EFCC, if there's no major EFCC case, that a lot of times still even goes nowhere. But, the expectation in the Nigerian mind is that it has to be the EFCC investigating and charging this person with, hundreds of billion, of naira in fraud before we can have, any conversation about it. But from what you've said, before we even started, we don't have to wait for the EFCC. The state government as itself, the State House of Assembly, or even an individual has the ability to put out its case. Go do its own fact-finding mission, put out its case against this individual. The police itself should be able.
The police have a fraud unit, anti-fraud. The police have a fraud unit. So you don't have to wait for EFCC. If you have any, you can just take it straight to the police. It doesn't have to wait. It's not EFCC alone.
And these are some of the things that trouble me the most. The fact that we don't even act like the police itself exists when it comes to these types of
it is
crimes.
Even before the advent of the EFCC, it's the police that have that right and that capacity to be able to investigate issues of fraud. They have a full department in the Nigerian police
force,
domiciled at the first. In fact, I think it's a DIG that is in charge, and you have various AIGs and commissioners of police down the line that are in charge of it. So if there's any level of fraud, the police can be able to go in. But most often than not, I need to point this clear, just like that of EFCC. If EFCC does not just wake up and say, yes, I'm going to, you must get a petition across. It's just like a court. Yeah. The fact that the judge heard that somebody stole or did this thing will not just start it. You must take that case to
what I'm just trying to establish, and just to remind our viewers, you can also call, share your thoughts. If you're from Kaduna State this morning, we'd like to hear from you, or any other part of the country. What I'm trying to establish here is that when we hear about new governments making claims about the previous government mismanaging funds and all of that, and eventually that case just dies or those conversations just die, I would like to remind these state governments that if you are not taking full advantage of what is available to you to investigate and prosecute this man or woman, stop wasting our time.
Is it only the state government? What of the National Assembly? You've forgotten? All the probes that goes on at National Assembly, committee this, committee that, and the rest of the, what do you see coming out of it? Nothing. They just finish the probe. They say, we're passing our investigation to the executive, and that is where it ends. And it shouldn't be so. It shouldn't be so.
Let's move on to other stories this morning. There's also a story on the Punch newspapers this morning here, and we spoke with Professor Shudeke sometime this week. Government and ASUU meet to avert strikes in varsities. Let's get your thoughts on that one. Of course, the NLC strike has been suspended for now. ASUU did, threaten their own strike.
Yes, when it comes to issue of ASUU, it's no longer news. So when I read anything about ASUU going on strike, it's just like NSC saying they are going on strike. It has so consistent, and it has always been issue of funding, issue of salaries and the rest of them. And we've been on this for over 30, 40 years, right from the days of Ali Mosgo and the rest of them. When I was in school, I left the university in 1990. I knew that all through my 5 years in the university, we are always having this issue every 6 months as we go on strike. But I don't think that ASUU is selfish in its demand, because you come to think of it, most of their colleagues have even jackpot. When you see people, a lot of this jackpot, it affects the universities and tertiary institutions more than even the individual. You know, the individual, but it is difficult for you to replace lecturers, professors, PhD holders, lecturers, you know, in the universities and the polytechnics or whatever. And so when they make some of this demand, it seems as if it's just their selfish, it's not their selfish interest. It is for the betterment of it. Look at the UNESCO indications when it comes to how much should be budgeted for education.
Yes.
Have we been able to meet that threshold in the past 20 years? The same thing for health. I think it's about 15% of the budget, or I can't remember whichever now. Have we able to do that? And it trickled down to a lot of, because people have people talking, oh, cholera. And I was saying something on that platform yesterday or so. And I said, we are talking of cholera. The fact is that the institutions, research institutions in Nigeria, you're talking, you don't have vaccines. If funds are provided for most of those research institutions, they'll be able to get us the vaccines. In the universities, most of those institutions, most of those money that's supposed to be made for research are no longer there. You don't see professors doing any research again because they cannot be able to do it. They can't be able to afford it. So those are the kind of, so it has a spiral effect. Now, down to the issue of minimum wage. The governor said they are meeting, you know, after the fact, the president said that he's going to step down the issue of this until he had a much robust discussion with the state government and also the organized in the private sector. Now, the governors, I think they're meeting today or tomorrow to be able to harmonize this. And we are hearing that by the end of July, something will come out. But that was also what we are told, that on the 12th of June, June 12th, that the president was going to announce the new minimum wage. But the president told us that, yes, he's ready and he's going to transmit. It's about transmitting a letter to the National Assembly. Only for Labour to come back and say, no, sir, we've not agreed. Then that was put on the stall. Then on this, I think this issue of minimum wage should just be, it's taking too long, for goodness sake. 1 year, it took the government just less than a minute when the president was inaugurated to say fuel subsidy is gone. It has taken the president over 1 year to now tell us what he wants to do. They want to do better. But I don't blame the president solely, because it is not just about the federal government. It's about the federal government, it's about the state government, it's about the local government, it's also about the private sector. And I've always been of this school of thought that I believe that we should tinker with our laws where every state should be allowed to be able to come up with what it can pay. My state of Imo, it will be very difficult for you to compare my state of Imo with Lagos State. If Lagos State are going to pay 250, can Imo pay 250,000? Because if you look at it presently, some states still can't pay the 30,000 naira, have not paid it. Over 18 to 20 states have not been able to pay. It's not it's not because of the fact that they may not be able to pay, but because of the selfish interest of our leaders. Because you cannot tell me that what you receive from the center has increased by over 300% since the removal of oil subsidy, and you still cannot be able to pay those minimum wage. Then something must be fundamentally wrong. And if they cannot be able to, then the governor should be able to resign.
Yeah. All right. I think let's look at the Nigerian Tribune, still on the front page. Cardozo expresses optimism about taming inflation, says CBN will adhere to conventional method. Do you express same optimism?
Well, they've been trying their best as it were, for me, but is their best good enough? That is because the basic thing is that if it does not trickle down to the pocket, your pocket, my pocket, and the food on the table, whatever economic jargons anybody is saying doesn't make sense to me. You saw what was trending. My sister is very good at social media, and I didn't say anything. Wow. You saw what was trending about 3 tomatoes in one of these supermarkets was going for about 6,000-7,000 naira. Average Nigerian is suffering. Food prices has hit the roof. It is for the first time I am seeing in Nigeria where people are now buying sliced yam. I don't know. I have never seen it in my life. Yam used to be whole. You want to buy yam, you go and buy one whole. Now,
but a lot of people can't afford it.
The people cannot afford it. Yeah. And we have to be very careful. Now, you say, oh, we cannot happen in Nigeria. It happens. I've said it time and time again that there have been instances where a government was brought up just because of the price of bread. We saw what happened in Kenya. Just Kenya, just there. Because of the finance bill, the people troop out. And before you knew it, the government thought the president was saying all sorts of things. But at the end of it all, he has eaten his words. Yesterday, when he saw that the youth, and I'm talking about the youth, have practically taken over the conversation. He has nothing to, what else did he do than to say, I'm withdrawing it. And before then, over 24 people or 27 people have died. So it gets to a point where you push the goat to the wall, and the next thing is it passes back. Anything that will trigger any kind of unrest in Nigeria should be arrested now. We cannot be able to afford it because people are ready to do anything. And that is why I think that these issues, especially economic issues, even based on what the president promised, palliatives, some of the things surrounding the increment of the petroleum, should be rolled out, for goodness sake. I laugh when I see every day one governor will come and say, we're about to share palliative. They bring out 500 bags of rice.
Yeah, but that has never worked.
Has it ever worked anywhere? Has it ever worked anywhere? Yeah. Or you say you want to share 50,000, 24,000 across about 12 million Nigerians, and I ask you, which register are you using to share?
That has absolutely never worked. You know, I mean, we keep playing the ostrich, and that's one of the problems.
And that's it.
Explosion rocks Port Harcourt, kills dynamite-bearing protester. It says also anti-Fubara forces enjoying federal might. Clark tells Tinubu. And so, of course, you know, the drama continues in Rivers State.
There's another paper that reports that same story, and the way it reports it is, I can't see the paper now, but it says that they're trying to...
Explosion at hotel employed to foist state of emergency
yes.
on the street.
Yes, the governor came out yesterday during the visit of some members of the National Assembly to the state, and in response to some of the issues they raised, and he said that there was a deliberate attempt to make Rivers State look insecure, and he stated that the bomb was meant to be detonated at the presidential hotel in Port Harcourt, where those senators and House of Representatives members were staying, so that it will give them the impression of insecurity, so that when they get back to Abuja, they will be able to back that. That is the scenario he painted. But good enough, I heard that the guy behind it has been arrested, and he's facing question. But I think the issue of Rivers State should be laid to bear. And it should be laid to bed. And I believe that if the president, my personal opinion, if the president wants this to stop, he can be able to do it. And ask me why. It's not by telling the governor, but by telling the Minister of FCT, who is under his watch, that, my friend, focus on the job I've given you, which is the FCT. If you want to play politics with Rivers, probably you have to lead the cabinet and go and play your politics. But once you are within this cabinet, then because it is bringing a lot of wrong vibes to the government, because the impression everybody is having is that whatever is happening, especially with Wike, that the president is behind him, and that in itself is not good for this bet. I think that they should be able to sort this out if what they are fighting for is in the interest of the people of Rivers State and not their personal interest.
That's a big if.
Capital if. That's why I said if. Capital if.
Really big.
That's a really big if. You know, I did mention, that. You know, nobody can claim to love Rivers State so much that they wouldn't allow governance to go on in the state.
Yeah, totally.
Your love for Rivers State cannot be that dark.
I totally agree.
You will not allow actual governance going in the state for more than 1 year. So
I
don't know if you can call it love.
Yeah,
there has
not been any progress in the past 1 year in Rivers State, because all they have been doing, no development. All they have been doing is just fighting.
Well, anyway, another place where they are fighting is not just in Nigeria, but also in Kenya. Thank you very much, CKN, for joining us.
Yes, as I said, what happened in Kenya should be an eye-opener to the Nigerian government. Anything is possible. Let us be careful and make sure that we listen to the people and do the right thing. Yeah. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll let you know what our guest has to say.
Welcome back to What Nigerians Are Saying. Our focus today is on Kenya, where young people have taken to the streets protesting initially for a change in government policies, but now protesting against the government itself. The initial call was the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024, a bill that they say sought to tax Kenyans further and as a result make life incredibly difficult for Kenyan citizens. The simplified explanation is this: the country is in a lot of debt and is seeking to raise funds to repay this debt. The government, in a bid to raise funds for the repayment of this debt, has now refused to toe the path of borrowing, but has decided to generate revenue by taxing its already overburdened citizens, even when the said citizens say that they do not see the government cutting down on the cost of running the country. The coming of President William Ruto at the time seemed like sunshine on a cloudy day. He had the perfect underdog story. He often recounted his childhood stories where he was very poor, he wore his first shoes at the age of 15, sold chicken and groundnuts by the roadside in the rural areas of Rift Valley, and as a result, connected deeply to the poor people in Kenya from an experiential standpoint. Now, at the time when he chose to run for office, he was a deputy president, but yet didn't have the support of his president, Uhuru Kenyatta. Reminds you of Philip Shaibu in Edo State, right? Well, it would have been the same, except that William Ruto came out victorious at the end. He outtweeted the power of incumbency, beating his opponent, the then 77-year-old Raila Odinga, who was very popular, not just because of his history with Kenyan politics, but also because he had the support of the incumbent, President Uhuru Kenyatta. Now, William Ruto, who was 55 years old at the time, emerged winner, bringing hope to the young people on the continent who in different counties had been fighting against the concept of geriatric leaders. He won on his first try, and he brought hope to the hustler nation, the struggling young people that their dreams were valid. I mean, what better story of hope is there than the one titled From Chicken Seller to Kenya's President? By the way, that was a news headline of stories that announced his win on the August 9th, 2022 elections. Now, back to present-day reality. The young people in Kenya have felt that their hopes of a revived economy has been dashed. They have complained of the rising cost of living for citizens and the corruption problem in the government. They declared 7 days of rage, taking to the streets to protest against the finance bill. The bill had crossed the 2 readings and had come to President Ruto's table awaiting his signing. Now, in response to their protest, he has now rejected the signing of the bill. But the young people now have a different ask. They are saying that the president must go. They allege the killing of young people by armed men who allegedly shot directly at protesters. In this protest, Kenyans have lost their lives. Buildings have been set on fire. The most heart-wrenching videos from the protests are circulating on social media. And today, the plan is to occupy the State House, asking President Ruto to resign. Now you may ask, what concerns Nigeria? And here's how it does concern Nigeria. Apart from the fact that Kenyans are African brothers and sisters, Nigerians can relate to the struggle of better living, seeing how the cost of living has become unattainable for the masses. Many Nigerians have also recounted being triggered by the protest in Kenya that has led to the loss of lives of Kenyan citizens, as it reminds them of the October 2020 EndSARS protest that also led to the loss of lives of young Nigerians. Similar complaints have been highlighted across both countries, one of which is the extrajudicial killings by armed men during the protest. So yes, Nigerians have definitely been speaking about the protest in Kenya, and this is what they're saying on X. Our first tweet is from singer-songwriter Adekunle Gold, and he says, to everyone protesting in Kenya, please stay safe. Your courage is inspiring us all globally. I am with you in seeking a better situation for Africans in Africa. Hashtag reject finance bill 2024. Now, his lovely wife, singer-songwriter Simi, also goes ahead to tweet about it. She says, I stand with the people of Kenya. It is both powerful and heartbreaking for our people to have to fight and die for freedoms and rights, Godspeed and strength. Nesochi Okeke-Igbokwe also tweeted about this on David Hundeyin. David Hundeyin first said, I know that by doing this, I'm forfeiting my ability to travel to Kenya, at least while this US government puppet remains president. But I have chosen to stand with my African brothers and sisters. William Samuel Ruto must go. And the next tweet is from Nesochi Okeke-Igbokwe, who says, my colleagues in Kenya said they're protesting because if the finance bill is signed, the value of their current earnings will be reduced by half. I'm rooting for every single one of them fighting against that wickedness. This is sort of the reality that Nigerians have, because if you would agree, a number of our earnings have been reduced by half, if not less. Senator Shehu Sani goes ahead to say, the events in Kenya is not the Arab Spring, but a strong message to all African governments. Where patience ends, revolts begin. N6 has also tweeted about this, and N6 went ahead to say, any criminal present in West Africa that is not panicking right now, watching the protests in Kenya is not intelligent. Aisha Yusufu was, of course, tweeting about this. She's been very vocal about conversations, and it's not a surprise that she's shared this. She said, what would it have cost President Ruto of Kenya to go on the streets and meet the protesters and say to them, this is why we wanted that bill, and then task them to come up with a better solution so the bill can be discarded? What, she asked. His actions were criticized, and the body language with which, he attended to all of this was some form of criticism as well against him. Now, Maurice Moye has also tweeted about this. He says, police and army should stop killing people in Kenya. The dead can't pay taxes, which is what caused the protests in the first place. Now, I'm going to end the tweets on a really light note by Bishop. Bishop's tweets, he says, can we please put up his tweet? He says, Nigeria, una de see Kenya, yet our own na Davido wedding they trend. Nonsense. This includes me. I like that he finished dragging everybody and then included himself. But this is what Nigerians are saying regarding the Kenyan protest. But also a reminder to us that things are looking tough on the continent, and to appeal to our leaders and to appeal to ourselves, to be able to hold our leaders to account. There is strength in our numbers, and the office of the citizen is the highest office of the land. This is what Nigerians are saying, but we just want to say once again that we wish the people of Kenya all the best. Our hearts, our thoughts, and our prayers are with the falling, and we do hope that there will be some peace that is returned to the land shortly. We'll be right back. Let's now head over to Breakfast Central.
Welcome back. The federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities, ASUU, met in a closed-door meeting on Wednesday, a first since the Tinubu-led administration took office. The meeting was attended by the Minister of Education, Tahir Maman, the Minister of State for Education, Yusuf Sanunu, and other top officials in the ministry.
The ASUU President, Emmanuel Oshodeke, who led the union's team, told journalists after the meeting that the negotiation process had begun while hoping that the federal government would follow up on what had been agreed upon. The parties also agreed to kickstart a communication process to avert the planned industrial actions by the union. Now, it's important to reiterate what ASUU's demands are. They are asking for funding for the revitalization of public universities. They're also talking about the renegotiation of the 2009 federal government and ASUU agreement. They're looking at the payment of all earned academic allowances, payment of withheld salaries, resolution of university autonomy, and a stop to the proliferation of public universities. These are some of the things that ASUU is asking for. They're also looking at the implementation of the reports of visitation panels to universities, reversal of the illegal dissolution of governing councils, implementation of university transparency and accountability solution in place of IPPIS, payment of promotion arrears, resolution of alleged illegal recruitments in the universities. They're also asking for the reliefs of outstanding third-party deductions, payment of salaries to staff on sabbatical, part-time, and adjunct appointments, and implementation of the Memorandum of Action of December 2020. These are the asks that ASUU is requesting for. It's been an on and off conversation for years now. We cannot say that we're not privy to, what ASUU is asking for. And like I said, their ask is oftentimes not, they're not, what do they call it? They're not asking for too much. We're just looking forward to seeing the government, to see a finality to these back and forth. Yep. It wouldn't take too much for them to sit down and say, okay, this is what we're agreeing upon, and ensure that it's implemented within a certain time frame. The rate at which this has gone on for so long is a reflection of how much attention or how much priority is placed on the education sector here in Nigeria.
Yeah. And I think the previous guest did mention, that the UNESCO standard, is, I think it's 26%.
Yes,
I did take a look at that for education. Nigeria has barely done 10%. I don't think we've even done 10% of our budget to education, in the longest time. The argument would be that, maybe there's no money, but I think the argument or the reason is because we don't prioritize education that much. If we have seen it as one of the biggest priorities, to invest in and have a time frame, 10, 15, 20-year time frame, we definitely will have seen results in the last, long while, but we don't. And another aspect, is that I mentioned yesterday, like you've said, a lot of Nigerians are familiar with the back and forth, with regards to ASUU and the federal government. And it is because for the longest time, the Nigerian government has failed to meet up with its promises that it's made to ASUU. They sign memorandum of understanding, sign memorandum of action, every couple of months, every time that there's an industrial action. But the federal government never, gets to meet up. And I did mention to Professor Oshodeke the other day, I was asking him if he's disappointed that the Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, who was one of the people who chaired the negotiations the last time that ASUU was on an 8-month strike, a really long strike, he was one of those who chaired those negotiations and made promises on behalf of the federal government. Of course, took the federal government's message to ASUU. He's currently the chief of staff to the president, and so you would expect that he would also, be one of the people who would push for the implementation of the agreements that they had with ASUU. So is ASUU disappointed? Was Professor Oshodeke disappointed? And he, he did share his thoughts. But, the thing is, with the proximity that Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila currently has with the Mr. President, I believe that he should be in the president's ear now to tell him that the last time we had discussions with these people, these are some of the things that we agreed. Can we at least meet up with some of these agreements? Listen, you can criticize ASUU. and everybody has the right to criticize ASUU and say, okay, your approach might be wrong. Everybody can place their own, requirements on the Nigerian university and compare them with universities abroad and say, this is what universities abroad are doing. This is how they're also raising funds. Some of the universities in America or in the UK earn more money than states in Nigeria, arguably. I might be wrong, and it's okay if I'm wrong. But there's a point that I'm, trying to make here. And there could be those arguments that, you can tell ASUU that you need to change your approach, university system across the whole country. But of course, that would also come with some type of constitutional amendment to give universities more power to raise funds for themselves. And then you would get to a point where Nigerians would then have to fight tooth and nail to afford these universities. But those are different conversations entirely that we can have individually. For now, the federal government has made commitments and made promises to the academic staff of universities, and we need to question how many of these commitments the federal government has come through with. And that's what Professor Okeke was saying the last time we spoke with him. We said that we keep talking about a strike. The conversation here is not about a strike. He is not one necessarily pushing for a strike. What he wants the conversation from the Nigerian media and Nigerian civil society and Nigerians is that they should push and put pressure on the federal government to follow through with the agreements that they had with ASUU. If the federal government has a different opinion, and that's what the federal government needs to say, that, okay, we have had these conversations with ASUU. We do not agree. At least let it be that the federal government is saying we don't agree. We don't agree with some of the things that you're demanding. We do not agree with some of the points that you're making. We do not want to pay you these salaries. We don't agree that lecturers should be paid for sabbatical. We don't agree with the implementation of any of these things. The payment of salaries, like we talked about sabbatical and a couple of other things. The federal government says that okay, we don't agree. That's a different thing. But you can't have an agreement with a time frame with these people and continue to fail to follow through with those agreements without expecting them to go back on strike to make complaints. And so at this point, it is, I believe, from the way things have played out, it is the federal government that seems to be failing, with the whole, situation concerning ASUU. And Nigerians need to remind the federal government of their commitments to education. The Bola Tinubu government needs to be reminded of its commitments that should be made to education. If we want to say, okay, we're changing the constitution, or we're not going to be baby spoon-feeding universities, or then let's have that conversation. If that is not the conversation that we're having, then on the federal and on the state level, every single promise that has been made to ASUU must be followed through. Or at least tell us that you can't. You get my point? You can at least tell us that you can't. Tell us that, okay, ASUU, this one that you said here, we won't do this one. This one that you said, yeah, okay, we'll do so.
But it's still the same dance that we see with the federal government and the labor, the organized labor. It's almost like, oh, we will do it, we will not do it. Oh, don't worry, we'll do it. You're giving them hope. Well, let's come back to the negotiation table. You only see the seriousness of the government when there's an impending strike, or when there's a threat of a strike, or when the strike has actually eventually kicked off. Because sometimes we would have given them sufficient notice. But nothing is done until they're now actually going to strike. Again, we say that the priority that government places on education is a reflection of, how they perceive education, how important they perceive education. Majority of them do not have children in Nigerian universities. They don't have, the majority of them, their loved ones are not schooling in Nigeria, so they don't understand the plight. If you had to experience staying at home for 8 months, or you've experienced seeing your kids stay at home for 8 months, I would hope that you would fight for better.
But that's a thing, right? Which, that point might be true. But if you have made promises to the Nigerian people when you were fighting to represent them in the National Assembly or in any level of government, you don't have, and this should be a regular human expectation, you don't have to have your family directly affected by these things for you to have a human face and to be able to understand what the Nigerian people are dealing with. And I remember that I mentioned this thing a couple of days ago when, we said, maybe sometime a week ago or so, when we said, oh, they're disconnected. And I would continue to argue that that's not necessarily the truth. That it's only human that you, as a representative of the people, don't necessarily have to be dealing with that same problem before you understand that your representation of the people should make their lives better. That the fact that you're in the National Assembly, you should be able to say, okay, my role here is to make laws that would enable the citizens to live a better life. That as you are governor, as you are president, these are things that should concern you. It doesn't matter whether your children are schooling here or not.
Yes.
I mean, it's within your rights to put your children in any school that you want to. That's your business. If you can afford it, do it. But it doesn't mean that you should now not understand that I should still make commitments to education. So
it's a call to action for Nigerian citizens, and I dare say African citizens, that we must now start to look at procedures of recalling people who have been, put in office to represent us and are maybe not doing what they were sent there to do. We then need to stop believing a lot of the lies and propaganda that is being sold during elections by a number of leaders who come and say, oh, this is what I would offer. But, I mean, this one, their position is not an elected position. If we're looking at, for example, the Minister of Education, for example, that's not an elected position. So I would say that also, again, we need to go back to reviewing how people are put into office. What are the expectations that we have of them? What KPIs are we measuring them against?
Unfortunately, we're out of time.
We don't have enough time,
right?
Yes.
But on Monday, I would respond to this not on Monday, maybe tomorrow, but likely on Monday, on the idea of time and the people who represent us. Because I tweeted something yesterday about how these people, for me, and a lot of people, represent a waste of time.
Yeah.
That's
right.
what it is.
Let's move on from this conversation. We have a lot of things to talk about, but I will be back again same time tomorrow, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. We thank you very much for joining us. Please do not tune off. We have more exciting conversations coming. Let's share with you what's happening much later today on News Central.
All right, 9 a.m. this morning, we're bringing you, of course, news headlines.
1 p.m. West African time, we're bringing you In the Game. And 10 p.m. West African time, we're bringing you NC Tonight. Thank you very much for joining us on today's broadcast. We'll be back again same time tomorrow. We send all our love to our family and friends in Kenya, wishing you all the best, and we hope for the match today to be void of any form of violence and that it be a peaceful match. We'll be back again tomorrow to bring updates on that as well. I am Olive Emodi.
I'm Osaogi Ogbawa. Have a great day.